I was having that conversation with my mom about the mortgage for the house that I bought for her. Like, she was like, you be having me pay for these extracurricular, like, for like these little things. I'm like, ma'am, how much you think the mortgage is for that house you live in?
Right.
I'm like, that's a $1,200 mortgage. Mm-hmm. You think the little bit of money that you putting in doing anything is not? it's doing nothing.
What's up? Welcome to the Hube Knows Best Pod. I appreciate your support. In return, I hope I provide you with some worthwhile gems that benefit you on your journey. At the very least, I hope I put a smile on your face. If not, hopefully you share this with someone that does benefit. And I got you next time. Again, thanks for joining today, and let's get this thing going.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Hube Knows Best Pod, and I'm gonna give you the whole truth, nothing but the truth, well, as best as I can, so help me God. So today I got my very close friend, very interesting friend, very, very accomplished friend.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I thought I was going somewhere else.
Yes. I won't say her real name, but this is Martie, everyone.
Hi.
It's Martie Burris. So I brought Martie on the show because Martie has a very interesting story. We were actually talking about it. I didn't know that Martie is from the Gary of Wisconsin. So she's from like on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin. And she said she was enlightening me about some things, but I think her story from being from the Gary of Wisconsin to now being like a senior director of product at Salesforce, which is a great accomplishment, especially as a woman of color, a Black woman, being in tech. But she also has many things going on. She's a great traveler. She's a nonprofit owner, right? But also a great friend. And we'll get into a lot of those things as we get going. So Martie, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Hubert.
Appreciate it. Martie was talking shit about me before she came in here on Instagram, calling me her judgy friend.
I mean, y'all see his clips. Y'all see the same stuff on Instagram and podcasts and YouTube as I do. Is he not the judgmental one?
I'm not really judging. I'm just calling out things that I do not like. I don't like them. I don't go up to people and say that to their face anymore.
Oh, yeah. Heavy on the anymore.
I haven't done that in probably about 6 years. 6 years. Start letting people, enjoy themselves.
Maturity, growth.
This is growth, as they say it on Insecure. But yeah, so Martie, like I said, thanks for coming on the show. I wanted to kind of get into like your origin story, like you from Wisconsin. First of all, when you think of a Black person from Wisconsin, it's rare. And most of those Black people come from Milwaukee. You're not from Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. So like, how was that growing up, being a Black girl from like a border town of Illinois in Wisconsin? Like, what was that like? So
a lot of people have an assumption that I grew up in this very whitewashed community, maybe with a little fountain outside in the front yard and all that.
That's what I thought. White picket fences and everything.
No, we didn't have a fence. No. I did have a very strong family dynamic and very kind of like Cosby, the TV show, upbringing in terms of like the family dynamic and all of that, but it wasn't. The town is actually really Black. So I always explain to people Great Migration, right? And my grandma, she didn't know, right, all these terms, right? She's just telling her story. But the way she describes, to my family, my mom's side is from rural little town, Mississippi. You're talking like less than 10,000 people town.
Shit, I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm. And then my dad's side is from, Western Tennessee, like 2 hours from Nashville, also a small town. Actually, if you know where Lane College is, that's where they're from.
Okay.
And so both families all set to this area. And so if you think Great Migration, when they taught about us in school, they always stopped in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And my family was in Chicago at one point. And then they kept hearing about jobs an hour away in Wisconsin. And so that's how we ended up there. They took jobs working in the mills, working in paint, it's a very blue collar town. Everybody works in the factory.
Right.
And so that's how we kind of got there. But everyone was Black. All the businesses were Black. All my teachers were Black growing up, all the way through high school. All of the things that we did were Black. The city council person was Black. And I'm like, if anything, Netflix need to do a special on this little slice of Wisconsin.
What's the name of the city?
Beloit.
Beloit.
Like, Wisconsin.
Sounds like Beloit.
Well, they say it's bullet because if you drop a rock in the toilet, it says bullet.
Okay, fair enough. What?
But I don't know the story. But it's just such an interesting little town. But like I said, I grew up very black.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can relate to that. Like, I think a lot of times people associate places with whiteness that that's not necessarily the case, right? I knew that you had this like strong family dynamic. I wouldn't have guessed that your whole town was black or like it was very
and
black.
then I grew up with both sides of my family growing up in the same town.
Yeah.
And so that was also cool too. Cause small town. So like literally every street I had an uncle or auntie or cousin. And so like
what's the population, like 500 people?
No, it's like 30,000.
Okay.
But you know, my college was bigger than that, but you know, everybody lived in the same street. My grandmother owned a lot of property, so she owned everyone's houses. She even owned my other grandparents' house, like, and so she owned.
And this is your maternal grandmother?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that all contributed to this family dynamic, but I think it's very rare to grow up with both sides of your family, and because they grew up there and my parents moved there, they were, you know, small kids when they moved to Wisconsin. Their families grew up together, right? It's a small town. So, like, I got a lot of double cousins as well, you know, because my dad and his cousins met my mom, her sisters and cousins. And so
the family just all mixed up.
And so, like, you know, I'm hanging out with my family this weekend, but both sides of my family are going to be there, even though this is on my dad's side, because everybody's just really friendly and cool. And
that's dope.
Yeah.
That's hella dope. So, that's interesting. Like, you said your grandmother owned so much property, so that explains maybe your business.
I learned from her. That's where I started making money growing up. Because if I needed money for something, you know, there were 7 of us. My parents didn't have any money. My dad did not graduate from high school. My mom barely did. When she did graduate, she was pregnant. So, you know, very humble beginnings on that part. But if I needed money, my grandmother had it. And so if I wanted it, I would go and figure out a job I could do for her. And so maybe it was painting the walls of a rental property or mowing lawns.
Who's mowing lawns?
I'm very good at mowing lawns, actually.
All right, fellas. Me and Martie were just talking about this. She is newly single. So if you need a woman that can mow the lawn, because you can't.
I do designs.
What the hell?
Yeah, like, because everybody doesn't want straight up and down. Some people like the inner where it goes into like a square.
Yeah, you're also you're not supposed to do the same way every time. My dad owned the lawn care company. I don't know if you knew that, but
I just learned from my dad. He was a carpenter.
Yeah, so my dad owned the lawn care company. I hated that shit as a kid.
Well, I had bad allergies, so what happened is I would show up with this little girl with my lawnmower at people's house, like, can I mow your lawn? And they would just look at me because I was like 8, and they just give me $20 and I would go.
No, get out of here. So,
but my grandmother, she changed it. I had to work.
Fair enough.
We took allergy pill and got to work.
Okay, so you said both your parents really, like, their education ended at high school.
My grandmother's none of my grandparents went to school past middle school.
Okay, and then your parents only high school.
Yeah, and I was the first person on both sides of the family to graduate.
Okay, so like you, the first person in your family to graduate from high school,
college,
or for college. Okay, in an all-black city, and you choose to go to Purdue.
Okay, so let's get into that. So in high school, my parents moved to Indiana, and so that's how I get there. When it's time to go to college, I had no one to help. So fun fact, finished high school early. I actually finished high school when I was 16. And so I had basically a gap year before it was cool. And so in that year, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I had this little guidance counselor, my principal, that were willing to help me. And so I only applied to 2 colleges. It was either Vanderbilt or Purdue. And I never visited them.
You must really love the black and gold.
It was the black and gold. I like the colors.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about like what colors do I want to wear long term. Like, because I know like alumni, I always have to wear this color. And so it was either black and gold or like a navy. I was open to that. Like I was kind of a fan of UConn, but that just seemed like wasn't going to be my vibe.
Very far.
Well, I liked it because of basketball, but when I started looking at like the academics, I was like, I think I'm going to go Purdue. So
no shade to anybody.
Go Huskies.
It's a UConn alum, but yeah.
But yeah, that's how it happened. And so they kind of helped me. I never did a college visit.
Okay.
Because who would know to take me there? And so I It's so funny. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. So I could see what Purdue was like. I went on Google Maps. You know, you can drop a pin in a person.
Yeah.
That's how I did my tour, so I could see what Purdue was like and choose to go there.
Excuse me? So you walked around campus with the little man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this also tells you how old Martie is because she was able to do stuff like that because...
How smart she is.
Also smart, but like, thinking about it, like, you are... I'm not going to say your age, but you graduated college. Graduated high school at 16. So you're doing this in the like late 2000s.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's always interesting to hear people's stories, right? So like I'm the first college graduate in my family as well. And nope, I didn't go visit Howard at all. Mm-hmm. Like I knew about Howard.
I read it in a book. It sounded really cool.
Yeah. I my favorite color is blue. Mm-hmm. So I was like, cool.
Picked up the colors.
It was the furthest school away from my house. Mm-hmm. And it was the number one HBCU. So I was like, cool, that works for me. And they had a great business program.
Yep. When the financial aid came back, I didn't understand private colleges. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw that Vanderbilt financial aid, it was Purdue. Yeah. The other thing I did too, my parents know about this now, but the other thing I did was they were not really a fan of me going away to school. They wanted me to go to like the local community college. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was, because of your age or just? Because of my age, just because I wasn't the first one to try to go to college. I was the first one to graduate. My brothers had tried, my cousins tried, just nobody had finished. And so they were like, if she's close to home, maybe she'll finish, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I did was, because they weren't trying to help, I just waited until tax time. And when the tax papers came, I just got their social securities off, did my FAFSA, and that's how I got all the way. And so when it was time to go to Purdue, I was already accepted and already done all the financial aid and done everything. It was just like, hey, in a couple of weeks, can y'all drop me off? So you told them before, like 2 weeks before? Pretty much. Maybe I should do that with my mom. So a lot of people don't know this story. So like, yes, I went to Howard, loved that experience. My mom wanted me to go to school at the college that was in my hometown. That was maybe a couple blocks from my high school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hell no. Now, it's not a community college, but I'm like, I'm not going to school down the street from where I went to high school. Yes. Just not happening. My mom kicked me out of the house like a month before I went to school because she really, like, I'm her only child. So like, she didn't want me to go far away. And they became an argument because I paid for everything. Like, because I did too. In high school, I had a job. I was getting Social Security because my mom was on disability. And I had convinced her to give me my child support check my last year in high school. So I had all this money to like buy clothes and pay for me to go to school. Mm-hmm. And so I had already paid for everything. And when she came at me like, I don't think you should go there, I was like, I already paid for that, so I'm going. I don't give a damn what you're talking about at this point. Like, yeah, when I told them I was going, it wasn't. They actually didn't give a lot of pushback. Yeah. No, it was just like, going down the street, kind of. Well, no, I was 3 hours from home. Okay, so you was like this close to Indiana. Yeah, okay. And so I was like, okay, this is cool, and it was like far enough that they couldn't pop up on me, so I was cool with that. And so we just did it that way. But yeah, it's always funny, that little tax W-2 thing. I don't think they ever put 2 and 2 together, like how I got into school without fast food, because I don't think they were remembering or thinking about that from my brothers. But no, I just waited till the mail came and took time. Did that. My gap year I started working. I was an intern. I interned at Merrill Lynch, and I worked at McDonald's afterwards. I always was working 2 jobs. And so I would go to Merrill Lynch like 11 to 5 every day. Mm-hmm. And then I would go to McDonald's 5 to close. You was getting it out of it. Yeah, absolutely. I've had 2 jobs up until, I still got 2 jobs. I've always had 2 jobs for as long as I can remember. I'm probably at my first W-2 job. I was 14. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, I was always working for my grandma. I started working for my grandma when I was probably 8 or 9. So that does explain a lot, like why you don't really. So if you know Martie don't really give people a lot of grace for like not being on that shit. And so now that gives context as to why. I've always had 2 jobs. I've always worked. And, when I went to school, because again, 7 kids, there wasn't any money for me by the time I went. My brother had already tried. He'd already used up all of the parents' little savings money. And they were still digging their way out of having to send him to college and him not finishing. And so there was no money. So I knew that there was no backup plan.
Right.
If I couldn't make ends meet, make things shake, whatever, I was back at home. And that was the last place I wanted to be. Like, I was one of those people that like plotted when I turned 18, I didn't want to see me again.
That's real.
Like, I'm out of here. And so when I got out, it was just time to execute on the plan.
That's real. So did you have a scholarship to Purdue, or so you paid your way through school?
I came out undergrad $80,000 a year.
Okay. And I'm assuming you're debt free now because of how well you manage your money and things of that nature. So like, how has it been? Like, I mean, you grew up in that black town and you moved to Indiana, but like, I feel like Purdue still was probably maybe a little bit of a culture shock once you get on campus.
It was, I think, the transition that like a couple of years in Indiana helped, because then by the time I got there, I didn't feel out of place. I was also in one of gifted programs growing up, so I was used to being, one of a few black kids in these like gifted programs. And so when I got to school, it kind of just felt like, oh, okay. Kind of felt like high school a little bit. Like, okay, so there's only 1,000 black people. That's how many black people in my high school. That kind of works,
Gotcha.
And so it didn't feel that out of place. And then Purdue is a college town, meaning the town of West Lafayette is built around Purdue. Now, Purdue was there first and the town came later. Mm-hmm. So everything is built for students. And so that helped too. I think if I was at like, what do they call it, like an urban campus or something, I don't think I would have probably done as well, because I would have been like shell shocked for a small town girl. But I think being from one small town to another small town, I was able to really kind of like, maneuver. And then I met a lot of amazing friends that, today, right, who I met literally the first week of school that really helped me figure out college, figure out campus, and kind of like have my way through those 4 years.
No, it's funny because of Martie, I know the Indiana college system very well. I know people from Indiana State, IU, Purdue, Butler. Like, people are like, how you know that person? You go to school in Indiana? I'm like, it's a long story at this point. And I would have never thought I would have made all these friends from all these schools in Indiana, but now it's like a thing.
Because it's all connected. Even though we all went to different schools, we went and partied at each other's campuses, so it's all somewhat connected. Even we would come up to Northwestern. I had a friend who played on the basketball team here, so we would come up here too sometimes and go to Evanston. But yeah, and I also worked in sports. I thought that was my first career. I thought I was going to work in athletics. So I traveled with our athletics department. So I went to all schools in Big Ten as well.
But did you major in engineering when you got to school?
That was a business student. Okay. So I had what's called an athletes major. I didn't know that. Because again, no help. So I majored in organizational leadership, which is part of the College of Technology. But that was athletes major. So not only me working in the athletic department, all of my classmates that were black in class, the football team, the basketball team, track team, whatever. So, people make fun of me all the time because that was my major. It's like, no offense to anybody, it's like having a major in criminal justice. Like, everybody, it was like a joke. And so I went and got
criminal justice.
So I went and got a second degree. So I actually graduated twice from Purdue. I went and got a second degree, starting sophomore year in an entirely different part, and that was in business management. And so I actually graduated May, and then I graduated in August with the other degree. No, I was just saying.
You did the other program.
I did the other program to kind of beef it up a bit, and to kind of help myself. I was just very nervous. I was going to get out of school and have a job. Gag is the people who are in that major are some of the most accomplished people that I know that graduated from Purdue.
The organizational leadership, yeah,
VPs, heads or whatever, CEO, like. Jokes on y'all. Y'all made fun of us all that time. And everybody I know who has that degree, that's phenomenal in their careers right now. And so it's kind of funny how that all worked out.
Well, I think a lot of times curriculum does matter. But like, you guys probably found it easier to get internships or things once you got out of school.
And the whole degree is basically like organizational psychology. So you're learning how to navigate corporate America. And so it makes it very easy. Like, to this day, I use that degree. To get stuff done. I reference books that I read during that time, and I'm trying to explain something. I always reference this book called like Who Moved My Cheese when I'm talking about like us making an organizational change, just restructuring my work. Like, hey, I know it feels weird right now, but it made me a better people leader because I was like, all the curriculum was around basically navigating corporate. All my case studies were on corporate stuff, and I still use a lot of that stuff on it.
Okay. And then, so you do all that, you matriculate, you get to college, you graduated at 20? 21?
Yeah, I just turned 21.
Okay. And then you went to Where's
Detroit
It's
first.
Detroit. Now, mind you, Martie's lived in
Little town.
these little towns. She went to Detroit where we met our great guest Carice.
Yes.
So I know Carice through Martie.
Yeah.
We met on a trip to Phuket.
Yeah.
It was my first Martie Con trip. So if you follow Martie on Instagram, you'll see that she has these amazing trips for her birthday. We'll get into that. But so you went to Detroit after school.
Yeah.
And you was who you work for?
Hube Packard.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the tech company? They're not tech. They're the computers. Yeah. I'm thinking about the.
Yeah. Hewitt.
Hewitt.
Yeah. So it was good. I think Detroit was shell shocked. I was very fortunate. One of my uncles had moved. One of my uncles that I grew up in Wisconsin had moved to that area, so I wasn't completely by myself. So I had my uncle there. My college roommate had moved there a year prior, so I had a friend there, and a couple other friends who went to that area during that time too. And so I was able to kind of, fix myself in there. And then after that, it was just a lot of hustle and grit. I get out there, feeling myself. I got higher starting salaries out of my class. Like, ooh, yeah, I'm hot, man. I'm like $65,000 a year. Fuck with me. I'm 21. And then that $80,000 of student loan debt.
Start eating at that 65.
Ooh-wee, the car payments and all this stuff. Because again, there's no one to call. So if I need something, it's credit, it's finance. So I learned about Dave Ramsey. I'm like, okay, I'm going to snowball my way out of this. Because when I first saw the ticket for school and how much money I owe, I literally bursted out crying. I could not stop crying because I was like, I owe more money than I make right. Yeah. And so I learned about Dave Ramsey. I started snowballing. I house hack. I lived with my college roommate. We run it back again. And I get a second job again. And so I, during the day, am a corporate consulting and, doing software implementations and system design. And at night, I worked out there. And I did it for 3 years. And Olive Garden got me in a day.
That's crazy. I feel like a lot of times people know their friends, but they don't know their friends for real. Like, because you have to really go ask people these questions and it don't really come up.
Yeah. I don't remember talking about it, but yeah, I did that for 3 years. And it was a humbling experience. You know how it teaches you first off, how wild white people are. There were many times my coworkers came into that and didn't recognize that I was their coworker. And I was running around the restaurant. Like, I, when I would see them, I'd try to avoid them. But there were obviously times.
They were coming to Olive Garden and wilding out, being disrespectful.
No. They did not recognize I am their coworker.
Oh.
Because
they don't see you as black.
They don't even see me. This is just my server. They didn't even notice, or they didn't notice me walking around in the restaurant. And I would notice these are coworkers.
I mean, it's kind of thick for them not to notice you, bro.
Dog, they did not register me like.
I'm sorry, you were a tall, thick black woman. How you not notice?
There was other black people that worked there, but they never registered my coworker could also be a server to this Olive Garden. They never registered. And it just kind of taught me a lot about how white people just really only see black folks in their certain capacity and they don't have the capacity to see them other ways. But no, I did that for years. And it was not fun, but that job got me through. It paid, it was all cash. So I was able to put that towards paying my car off, paying some loan off, started building up in savings and a nest egg. I just had like 2 rules. I said, if I'm off in my day job, I'm off here. And it was cool too because there were other people who were doing what I was doing. So there's a bunch of lawyers who worked with me as well who were all
trying to pay off their debt.
Exactly, trying to pay off their debt early.
I'm about to start looking at my waiters and waitresses a little bit different. I'm like, hey, what do you do from 9 to 5 o'clock?
Yeah. You'd be surprised, but it was a group of, we're also friends. I just seen them when I went to Detroit 2 weeks ago. We're also friends. I was in their weddings and stuff, but white folks, but they all graduated from law school around the same time. They were all early lawyers at different startups and firms and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so they all worked in the restaurant with me. But it was a grind. Like, when you think about how long people spent 22 to 25, mm-hmm. right? You're at the club every weekend, you're going out, you're doing all this stuff. And I am slaving myself away, working doubles on Saturdays, 11 on a Saturday to do this. And the idea of like going out and going to party was a lot more structured for me. Like I can only do that like,
every once in a while.
Yeah, like, because I knew how hard the dollar was to come by. So the idea of like going out to the club in Detroit and buying a bunch of liquor and doing all that stuff, I'm like, oh no, I can't do all that.
And it's Detroit.
Now granted, it's fortunate, it's Detroit, so you meet some nice men, you go out and you have fun and I don't have to pay for anything, right? But it was just a much different experience in my early 20s because most people started that grind like that, like I need to make my money and get serious in their late 20s, and I did it in my early 20s. So in my late 20s, I was actually having a lot more fun. I was able to travel and do whatever I wanted, and I'd already reached those goals by hustling more in my early 20s.
I mean, I think that's a great lesson for like younger people. Like, just because you got that degree and you think that degree is gonna make you some money, you can always hustle a little harder so you don't have to hustle as much when you in your late 20s and in your early 30s or whatever. Like, I wish I kind of had that example because like when I graduated college, the thought of working 2 jobs or doing an additional side job, that was so beneath me. But like
a lot of people, whenever I tell my siblings that, my siblings that call me like, hey, let me borrow.
Go get another job.
Man, I ain't getting upset. You calling a person who worked 2 jobs for years to say that you won't get a second job and you're not willing to do what I was doing, but you want the benefits of what I did to be here. Okay, cool.
Well, I think like people who don't understand, like even once you do graduate college, even if you have a great career, there are other things that are going to come up that having a second stream of income can offset that. Like, like me having a kid or you having sick parents or whatever, like your singular income, once something else comes into that dynamic, it kind of stretches that income in a different way than you was expecting. Like I was talking to my friend about this this week. She was like, oh, my landlord's raising my rent. And she was having a real dramatic experience about it. And I was like, bro, I don't want to hear nothing about your $200 rent. I was like, do you understand that my child has cost me an additional $4,000 a month in expenses? I was like, I was living life. I was enjoying my life.
Exactly.
I wasn't thinking about paying no bills. I was like, these cars get paid off when they get paid off.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, I have an additional $2,500 to pay for where I live at. I got child support, but I got utilities at another place. I got to have groceries here. It's more expensive to have groceries in Illinois than it is in Georgia. I'm like, bro, I don't want to hear nothing about your $200.
Yeah. Like, you have to suck it up. And so that's, I guess, to your point of me not having a whole lot of empathy around that now. Because when you know that there is no backup plan, you will figure out a plan. I think so many people are fortunate to have a backup plan of family or parents, or there was no backup plan. The second I got out of school, I was making more money than my parents ever made.
Right.
There was nothing. When I went and got my first apartment, my rent in my apartment was more than their mortgage was at their house. They could not call, and there were still kids at home. So I don't have a way to call home. I mean, my parents were praying for me. They
love you.
They love, but that's. That was it.
Yeah.
That was the extent of it. Or if I knew if they were giving me something, it was they were not paying the bill that month to give it to me, or kids weren't getting what they needed in terms of, supplies and stuff so I could have. And so that didn't sit right with me. And I'm like, I'm young, I'm gonna go get myself.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for parents to understand that. Like my parents used to be like, oh, do you need anything? And I'd be like, bro, you can't even touch. Like, whatever you think you're going to send me ain't going to do nothing. It may pay for me to get some gas.
I still don't know how much my bills are.
I was having that conversation with my mom about the mortgage for the house that I bought for her. Like, she was like, you be having me pay for these extracurricular, like, for, like, these little things. I was like, ma'am, how much you think the mortgage is for that house you live in?
Right.
I'm like, that's a $1,200 mortgage. You think the little bit of money that you putting in doing anything is not. it's doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, now if you want to pay the mortgage, by all means, I'll pay for everything else that you want to like I'll pay the utility bills, I'll pay for the internet, I'll pay for all that. Like, go ahead. You can take the $1,200.
Listen.
Or you can move out and I can rent the house out.
What do you want? But I think that's something to talk about too, because I think that was another thing that was a hard kind of truth as well. When I got out of school, you know, people heard where I worked, what school I graduated from, and they saw what they thought was a lifestyle on social media. And so that was the beginning of me feeling like the friend, the family member who had just made it to the league.
Mm-hmm.
Because the amount of money the family had asked for and has asked for over the years is astronomical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad explained to me well. He said, you know, you set yourself up as a pillar in this family, whether you realize it or not. The second you cross that stage, people started to see you differently. You ain't got that job, you know what you're doing, you know where your life is, and you work these 2 jobs, so everybody don't see you that way.
Yeah.
And to this day, right, I've been out of school 10 years, and that's still an adjustment. Is trying to realize that, you know, people see me in a certain way that I don't necessarily see myself, especially when it comes to like family and how much do you do for family or not do for family. Because, you know, my dad passed away during this time as well, back in 2015, and so that also added a stressor because he was the breadwinner. Mm-hmm. And so that added a lot of stressors at home. I had to make some tough decisions about how I was going to show up with my family and not show up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to get into that. You lost your father. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people I can sympathize to for the most part, I can't even empathize for people for losing grandparents, right? Mm-hmm. Because all my grandparents are still here. That I grew up with, but to lose a parent in your 20s, and you're that in his 50s, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's really young. He's 53.
Yeah, so I've had friends lose their parent, and I'm I don't know what I would do, especially in the midst of just graduating college, getting your life together, and to have your parent go, and then that shift your life. Mm-hmm. So how is that journey being?
That was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. Hands down. Nothing comes close to that. That is the deepest, darkest period of my life. The road to lose my dad and the year following that. Because I think in most people's family dynamic, their mom is the person, and dads are how it looks on TV. It's this supplemental person
who works and just
he just always is at his computer and just shows up, makes a couple jokes, but we're just happy he's there, right? Mm-hmm. Our dynamic was much different. My dad was the primary parent. He retired early because he, had a chronic, situation, and so he retired early. And so my dad was the parent that was there when I got home from school. My dad is who taught me everything I know about life. Anything that people think that, wow, she's so smart, she's so wise, everything. Even out of my career, my dad is the one who put this stuff into me. He's the one who taught me about tech and innovation. He's the one who taught me about product management.
And this is the man that barely graduated high school. Right?
Smartest person I ever met. He was the most well-read person I ever met too. My dad had walls from here to here, from there to there, books, and he'd read all of them. Mm-hmm. And he taught himself everything, right? Even teaching himself how to heal his body. Because part of the reason I graduated from high school early is because my dad was given 6 months to live when I was a junior in high school. Wow. And so I went to my guidance counselor and was what does it take to graduate? I just want my dad to graduate. Because you want your dad to see you graduate. Yeah, and based on that 6 months, you're supposed to be going in June. I would have graduated in May. And it shook my world up. And he was only supposed to even live with that disease for 5 years. That's the longest life expectancy. My dad lived with it for 15, and he didn't die from it either. He died because he got an infection. He got an infection and turned septic, right? But he never actually died from the type of chronic cancer that he had. So, but he learned how to heal his body and how to keep his body healthy for all those years through self-educating on, all these different aspects and just being this very well-read, very smart person. And he shared a lot of that knowledge with us.
That's dope. I think a lot of times the Black father in the home doesn't necessarily get the acclaim that they should get because in our community the mom is usually the person that's there and pouring into everybody. But I think without knowing your father, I could see a lot of your father in you because you're on top of shit, right? But you also don't let whatever's going on affect you too much.
That's my dad was a military. I would say he's almost military training, right? Mm-hmm. When something went to bother me and I would call him stressed out, he would let me get it all out, and he was you gotta let it roll off like water off a duck's back. They had to be tough,
That's
right?
a country shit to say, but that's dope.
They're country people, but
right.
like he would tell me that all the time. Or if I fucked up, he would let me get it out, cry it out. Oh, you crashed your car? Damn, that sucks. And then he would say, did you pay your insurance? I'm like, well, yeah, but I this and this happened. And he's like, all right, well, guess what? Some lessons might just cost you. This one's gonna cost you whatever. And there was no like. He was a very warm, kind dad, but anybody who knew my dad knew he did not play. And he definitely didn't play about me. I ain't saying I was his favorite, but...
Look, favor ain't fair.
Favor ain't fair.
You know.
And I think, you know, I was a child. I always say I was a child he prayed for. You know, my brothers came, but he wanted a daughter at the time. My brothers came because they had only had boys. And so, you know, they were going for the little nuclear family at that time. And so they were really praying to have a girl and have it appeared, you know. So,
and then they had other girls.
And yeah, just unfortunately. But it, you know, it's about
Martie has 2 sisters.
I do. I have 2 sisters, 4 brothers, big family. And obviously same parents. But yeah, that also is a dynamic too, just growing up with that many people. Because now I can't stand anybody in my personal space. But when you're a kid and you don't have personal space and you never even get your own room until you go to college. And then once you get your own space, you're like, oh, hell no. I'm never, ever sharing my space with anybody ever.
No, I feel that because growing up as an only child, I don't want nobody in my space. Like, like, people be like, you so, like, sometimes I'm like, I grew up in a house with an introvert. I'm not used to dealing with people unless I want to deal with them or they want to be dealt with. But now you're in my space. So just sit over there and relax. When I want you to come over here, I'll tell you, come over here. It's fine.
Yeah,
or like just sit here.
Imagine being like an introvert, but you can't get away.
Yeah.
There's never, even to this day, like when I go back to see my family, like I'm going to see my family later on today, I stay in a hotel because I have to be able to go decompress, and it's too much. It's too much sensory overload for me. And now being older and understanding why it's too much, it makes sense. Because, you know, I was a gifted child, a little bit more gifted than I realized, right? But it's literally too much, like, and I will flip out. Too much sound, like I really can't stand a lot of sound, and I will absolutely lose it. If it's too loud, I'm super sensitive to light. Like my apartment, I keep very kind of like dark and
clean.
Yes, but but I keep it very moody, right? And I like kind of like darker lights and all that. And so you live by yourself so long, you just always are trying to curate that experience when you're out doing that.
Right. So then you're in Detroit, right? You lose your father. And so it's 2015, and then I meet you in 2016.
Yeah, so that year after was really wild. And I, you know, Hewlett Packard split into 2 companies, right? It was splitting into a computer company and a software company, and they were splitting it into 2. And so there's Hewlett Packard, there's HP, right? HP is what everybody knows, the computer, and there's the other side, right? And so because of that, my boss at the time kept saying like, hey, I don't know if I can guarantee your job. For somebody who literally, you know, right when this is happening, I'm just getting to a place where I'm a little bit more comfortable financially, right? So I'm like, oh, I have a job. And so I started looking for a job. I mean, our dad's passed at this point, and all roads lead to California. And I'm just like, no matter where I applied, the job would say New York, they'd be like California. Hey, we love your resume, but this role is actually in San Jose. Hey, we love your resume, this role is in Foster City, whatever, right? And I'm like, why does everything keep taking me to the Bay? But this is my dad's idea. Before he passed, he kept telling me I need to move out there. And I'm like, Dad, I did not go to Harvard, I did not go to MIT. That is for extra, extra smart people. And I'm not that kind of smart.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I have line brothers that a line brother went to Brown, a line brother that graduated from NYU and Harvard. That's not what I associated today with. I just associated with tech nerds. Because he was saying Silicon Valley. You need to be in Silicon Valley. You need to move out there. That's where people like that's where your mind needs to be. I'm like, Dad, this is so flattering that you think I'm that kind of smart, but I don't think I'm that kind of smart. I don't know what you think I do for a living, but I don't think it's that. Now, fast forward 7 years, all right, he was right. But he was right about everything. So your parents know you've been.
And when I got there, people were not nearly as smart as I thought. Or maybe I just was much more smarter than I gave myself credit for, right? But yeah.
2 things can be true.
Yeah. And I get out there, I get land the opportunity. One take check, what is it called? One take check, whatever. I got it on the first try. So what I didn't know anything about product management. They told me I applied to the job because LinkedIn said I was 100% skills match. And so at that time I was applying to anything and had managers. I was like, well, I'm a manager. And so I was just applying to stuff just all day. Mm-hmm. And I would only look into the job if they called me back. And then I would look into it and get myself ready. So when I called, I'm like, okay, product manager, which one is this? I'm like, oh, this sounds dope. All right. Watched a couple of YouTubes. They were like, you're going to have to do a case. So I watched McKinsey case studies. I'm like, all right, cool. And got out there. They were so cheap. They didn't even let me stay for a full 24 hours. They flew me out, flew me back from Pacific to Detroit all on the same day. It was so good. But I get out there, I get the job. And so I moved to California. I'd never visited California outside of the 18 hours I was there for that interview. But I had some friends there from school. And
shout out to Liz.
Yeah, made a shake. And got out there, got back to hustling.
So like for people that don't know what a product manager does, like what is that? What does a product manager do? Because it sounds very technical, but I don't know that it is that technical.
It can be. It depends on what product you work on. So I was just explaining to, I do a lot of like workshops with kids and like Black Girls Who Code. And so I was explaining it using an iPhone. I'm like, somebody had to think about the iPhone, right? They had to think about the iPhone, they had to think about the iPad, and they had to think about iPhone, iPad, and what's the other one? And the iPod Touch, yeah. Yep. So I'm like, those three, I was like, when Steve Jobs thought of this, right? The original product manager, he thought of this. He knew he wanted all three of those things, but you had to figure out how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to work, or how all these things come together, and then in sequential order of what he wanted to do. So a lot of people don't know this, but even though the iPhone came last, it was always the intention. All of those other versions were just scaled down versions of what the iPhone was. But the iPhone was the original idea. And then we scaled it back, and the working kind of proof of concepts became products that they sold to try to validate that the iPhone would actually work. But that is what a product manager is doing. As I'm thinking through software and thinking through like what do users want, how can we get there? What's the fastest path to success? Maybe the iPhone, all right, that's 5 years from now, but we can make iPod Touch. It can look like the iPhone. We can see how users interact with it and put everything on it, but phone capabilities, and see how that works, right? And start to, to build these things out. And so it's just a person who is responsible for thinking of, if you're in a R&D type of product role, there's a lot of product managers, but if you're in R&D product management, which is what I work on, you have the coolest job in the world because you think of the next new technology, right? Dreamforce is next week, and it's so cute seeing all my other stuff. I'm like, oh man, I remember what I thought of that. Wow, look at that. Oh, look at my other little one. Good job. Wow, go ahead. And it's all this like software, just random stuff that I thought about based on data, experiments, projections, and we start working through it. And so it can be a technical role. I've definitely been in much more technical work because I was building software for software developers. But I've also built software for consultants. I built COVID software. That's probably like some of my claim to fame software. So I always tell people when COVID hit and you went somewhere and you had to fill out the paper, have you been sick in 14 days experiencing that? And eventually became digital. A lot of that software was Salesforce software, and I was the lead product manager for that. And so that's like I thought I was gonna get Forbes 30 under 30 under that, but then
I heard. Well, don't feel too bad because I heard a lot of people pay to get on that. So
yeah, because I'm like, whoa, how did this person get it? I built COVID software. Like what? Like my shit's on the news.
So when y'all see those 40 under 40, 30 under 30, some of them people really ain't doing nothing. They paid to be there.
Yeah, because if you start looking up some of the stuff that they built, you be like,
yeah.
I'm like, my software was contributed to Bubble Basketball, like. Because we work with Disney needed that to open the park to do Bubble Basketball. So it's like, I'm like, I had all of this in there. And they me, damn.
First of all, why am I? These are things I'm just putting out. Like, I gotta start talking.
I don't talk about work. So anybody who knows me knows I just a firm boundary. When I'm with my personal friends, we talk about personal things. My work life is just my job. But yeah, that kind of stuff, that's how I got promoted so fast. Okay,
yeah, because I was like, I remember you came out there, I was like, okay, she working at Salesforce. Then next thing I know, you senior director of product, getting people jobs at Salesforce. I'm like, is Martie smarter than I think she is? Like, what's going on?
But yeah, I started off doing that. I started off working. So yeah, consulting software first, then developer marketplace and building out software. So if you think like you and I need the app store, we download apps.
Yeah.
Software developers have mobile app stores too, where they can take little pieces of code and buy that to be able to help them develop apps faster. So I worked in the marketplace to do that. Then I did COVID software that kind of like sent me into like the stratosphere of Salesforce. I started working closer with like our CEO, our chief product officer. Like I was on a first name basis with a lot of these folks. And then what did they let me do after that? Slack. They put me on Slack. So Slack was one of the biggest acquisitions in the last decade in tech. And then I worked on, I would say, the end part of that. So I wasn't involved in due diligence and acquisition, but once we decided to purchase it, the merging of the companies and merging of the two software platforms together. And I was a lead product person that shipped the first set of products between the two companies. And then now I'm working on learning and development software. And lots of announcements coming next week for Dreamforce.
Dreamforce. It's so.
And then I was a professor.
We're gonna get into that, but like, I gotta go all the way back to Purdue. So like, did you, like you said you did this other program, so was that like computer engineering?
I got the technical chops at Hube.
Okay.
HB hired me and basically liked my personality, loved my story about being a first generation college grad. It's actually another amazing story from my dad, actually. When I went in my senior year, and this is something I still do to this day, some advice he gave me. He said, when I went into my senior year of college, he said, there are very few times in life where you get to know something is coming before it comes. Very rare times where God lets you know something's coming. You know a year from now, you got to graduate. And so you need to be praying now for the things you need at graduation. What does that look like? You know, you need a job, you know, you need a house, you know, you want to live certain places. It's like make a list of the things that you need and you pray over it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote out everything, and I know I still have it on a tablet somewhere of me, and I have it for every phase of life, every big moment. I have these pieces of paper because I've been doing this since I was 19 or 20, of writing these things out, praying about it, and then they happen, right? And so I wrote out that I wanted $60,000, that I wanted to work in tech because I had an internship that summer, and that internship I saw, I was there as a business intern. I'm like, tech side is where I need to be at. My dad had already been saying it, so I'm like, all right, I get where this is going. And so I just prayed about it. I interviewed with every major tech company in Silicon Valley because they used to call, Purdue Prairie, Silicon Prairie, right? Like every major tech company would come and recruit from us from their engineering school. I actually had an interview with Hewlett Packard, but the interviewer missed their flight. And so that was fall semester, and they never rescheduled it. And they happened to come back spring semester where they were recruiting for engineers. And somebody tweeted about it, like, HP on campus. And so I just showed it. Like, maybe I can tell somebody that I had an interview, and maybe they'll let me have an interview. And so I prepped so much for the first interview. I came in, and so it was like, like a big open forum, and they were presenting who they are and what they do. And I had questions. And my questions were so good that they offered me an interview. And in the interview, he told me, we didn't even talk, because the interview was about data modeling. He was like, you never dated model? I said, no. I didn't know what you're talking about. He said, you got 3 months between graduation and when this job starts. Would you be willing to take a class on it and take some type of intro to tech? We'll train you on the rest. And my first manager, he told me, when he offered me the job, he said, I can't teach soft skills. I can't teach the grit and charisma that you have. I can teach you how to be technical. And that's exactly what he did. And shout out to Kurt. Always love you. Appreciate you. You gave me a lot of really solid life advice, but also career advice around how to do stuff. One of the things that I use with my team all the time, or if you're ever talking to me about corporate stuff and you tell me you're not happy at your job, I'm going to tell you this. I know right now you want to be pitching, but sometimes I need you to play shortstop. You play a position right now, and the opportunity opens up to pitch. I let you pitch. You tell me all the time when I wanted to try different things. And say, Martie, no, I just need you to play. He was a former baseball player, and so he always give me all these like baseball analogies. And I'm like, all right, cool. But now that I'm older, I tell myself that, but I also tell the very ambitious young people on my team that I know you want to be a pitcher, but I need you to play shortstop.
Okay. All right. So you've had all these people pour into you, right?
Very blessed in that way.
And now you're you're pouring into others, right? You talked about being a professor, you have your nonprofit, like, so like, what went into that? Like, what was the process to getting into doing the professor thing and then the nonprofit?
I think the nonprofit came first. When I first started in the day, that was the easy part. I grew up learning to help people, right? My dad would pick up homeless people out the street, make me get in the back seat, put them in the front seat, and take them to go get a burger and talk about God, right? So I always grew up in this like being taught to help people. And so when I moved out to the Bay, I realized how in demand product management was as a career. And I was very fortunate to get into product before it got popular. Right now, it's like always on every list as a top career to get into in tech, right?
Right.
But and so I was able to start to help people. And so it kind of just blossomed out of that. I hated my first product job. I cried every day. That job sent me to therapy and everything because I was messed up about it. And I kept feeling like, did I even do this because I wanted to, or did I do this because I thought Dad wanted me to do this? Like I had a lot of strong feelings about it. And so helping people actually started to validate me. As I would help people get jobs, help people get opportunities, and teach product to people, and they would have these really amazing success stories. And I realized, no, I am good because you have to be good to teach. And so, that became something called floating chair. It comes from the Shirley Chisholm quote, you can't have a seat at the table, you bring a floating chair. And so that's what product felt like a lot for folks, was helping them get these floating chairs and these seats at the table, because a product person is one of the most essential jobs in an organization, and product has a very clear line to C-suite. Of all the tech roles, that's the clearest one to either being a chief product officer, CEO, or CIO, or CMO. So that was part of it. And then, what's the saying? Your gifts make room for you. People talk. I never talked about it. I still don't talk about it. A lot of people don't know what it does. They just know I got one. And but people started to talk about it, and they would put my name in a hat for different things. And so 3 years ago, the University of Washington comes and they want me to talk at a conference. And in doing the prep, I put in there like, and I'm also, responsible for voting chair. Voting chair created $10 million in salaries. And I'm like, hold on, we're trying to build something like this. Would you help us build a curriculum around this? And I'm like, how much? How much money you got?
Hey, that's always a good question.
All right, bet. At first I said no, because I was like, it's gonna be too much. And 2 jobs, this is gonna be a big second job. I'm used to second job being, a little bit more transactional. And so I'm like, worked 2 jobs before, what's another one? And I just jumped back into it 2 feet deep. And so we built something called the Inclusive Product Management Accelerator. And so that helps Black and brown folk, it helps historically marginalized people get their first job in tech and in product. And so we've seen a lot of good growth with that too, $1 million in donations. So it's been a really cool little journey. And then with that came a teaching job, because they didn't have a way to pay me for a service like that. They'd never done something like that. And so we can pay you to be a professor. And so I became a professor for MBA students, actually, even though I don't have an MBA. I taught MBA students in a ethics and technology class.
Okay. This is at Washington.
University of Washington Business School. Top 25 business school, let me be a teacher. And I have never...
She don't got a doctorate. She don't have an MBA. But here's the thing. That's why I always tell people, like...
It ain't fair.
It ain't fair. But, I always tell people, I got my MBA. But a lot of times people think I got my MBA because I wanted to, pivot in my career. I was like, bro, you don't really need an MBA to pivot careers. I'm like, most people care about your work experience or your relationships. If you have a relationship with somebody, that can help you navigate certain things that you don't necessarily know because people will work with you because someone's vouching for you. But I was like, the MBA is really for the network. I was like, I could give a damn about, I learned some things, yes, but the network that I got now on top of the Howard network just makes me makes it easier for me to pivot and work different rooms. But I think the MBA thing is, or the extra degrees, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, the extra degrees don't really do much.
I had a good professor who told me that, because I planned on starting an MBA program very shortly after undergrad. And that professor was actually from Harvard. And she told me, she goes, you don't even know MBA. She's like, I have a Harvard MBA. Everything that you've learned between both of your degree programs has covered everything you will get out of a Harvard MBA. Just go get a job. Super sound advice. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you.
Work experience matters.
And I just went out and started hustling. And then like I said, like I think when you move in purpose and you are moving in that kind of like divine energy, God's gonna send people on your path to help you out. And it just seemed like everywhere there was always this one person who just took a liking to me, poured into me. And I just was very fortunate to kind of have those kind of sponsors and mentors show up right when I needed them over the last kind of decade.
And I think that's also important to talk about, Will, is like, you're an introvert, right? Mm-hmm. But Martie's a people person, but doesn't have social skills. We're not going to talk about your condition. So, do you want to talk about that?
We can.
Okay. So, Martie was diagnosed with what, in the last 2 years?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed as having autism and specifically Asperger's. And so,
which opened up a lot of, the light bulb hit for why she interacts with people in a certain way.
It hit for me, but it also hit for a lot of people around that. That was most of it. At first, people were like, nah, you don't got that. That's hard, and I think too, it's funny because I've learned a lot, since I got diagnosed with it. But one of the things that I think was really interesting is I fit every stereotype. Mm. The least diagnosed people with Asperger's, and specifically that specific type of autism, are people who were born before 1995, people who are people of color, people who grew up in poor, underprivileged neighborhoods. I had and women. Women are significantly less diagnosed. I had everything, so I just fell through the cracks. But
I think there's also the stigma of having Asperger's, right? Like
there is, and I think there's also this opinion of what people think it looks like. Yeah. They think it looks like Mark Zuckerberg, right? You talk in a monotone voice. Yes, you talk in a monotone voice, like and you are just like so awkward, and you can't function. But one of the things that I've learned in this journey is the reason women get diagnosed with it less is because so much of what is related to autism is normalized for what women do, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, she's just off to herself. She's quiet. She's shy. She's a shy girl, right? Mm-hmm. No, maybe there's something else to it, right? Women specifically with Asperger's are very, very astute speakers. They're very, vast vocabulary. They're very good at having conversations. And so that adds to it as well. And so it's like all these little things that, and people are used to that. Girls talk a lot. She's, what's the word?
Loquacious.
Yeah, that's all stuff that goes with girls. Mm-hmm. But when men are like that, then it becomes a little bit more.
Like, why does nigga talk so much?
Yeah. And so, she's just a black girl with attitude. She's spicy because I'm just saying things that I'm like, people are,
you cut through it.
Yeah.
Something that's normal for men.
Oh, she's a straight shooter, Mm-hmm. She's kind of got a masculine side. She's like one of the guys, right? And all of that are things that are related to having Asperger's.
Yeah, so when Martie told us this on the trip, I was like, it's on brand. It makes sense. And then you were like, I think people owe me an apology for.
Oh, absolutely.
Martie wants apologies from everyone that
in my life.
Yeah.
First off, and anybody can relate to this. You're a little kid, you do something wrong, look me in my eye and tell me to do it. I can't look you in the eye. Look me in my eye and tell you, and I'm looking everywhere but your eye because I literally can't make eye contact with you. Like, I have learned how to do it, but it's like when I look at you, I don't look at you, I'm looking about
right. You're looking at a point.
Yeah, because I had to learn how to do it because I'm literally getting whooped and spanked as a child because I'm not making eye contact or I'm saying stuff. My mom would literally come from my stop saying stuff. It's like, you can't control what you say. Actually,
I can't.
Actually, and so when that skill set and learning how to kind of like navigate around like normies in the normal world is called mirroring and masking. Mm-hmm. And women are extremely good at mirroring and masking because that is what girls do, right? Oh, she's got lip gloss, I want one. She's got this, I want one. And so it's completely normalized. But when you're on the spectrum, you have to do that to be able to kind of like navigate the world.
So what you're telling me is most of the women in our lives are
masculine mirroring, yeah,
or are autistic.
Maybe.
But no, like shout out to the people that are raising autistic children, right? That are autistic or put into these boxes. I think there are so many stigmas that are associated with conditions that people have because people are just uneducated about what it actually means, right? like, I think people get obsessed with like one example of what that looks like. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, that's it.
And I have friends who love to deny. Yeah, I have a friend, his name rhymes with Manny, loves to deny because I, again, autism is a spectrum, and because I'm on the high functioning end of that spectrum, loves it. Like, you don't have that. Why do you always say you have that? That takes away from people who really do. No, just because I'm on a different side of the spectrum doesn't lessen that I have it. It just means that I was very fortunate and blessed to be able to be high functioning and have this go on. But if you think about it, I'm right in the perfect career, in the perfect space. Like, the Bay Area is home of autistic people. Like, it's home of the nerds, home of autism.
Socially awkward.
It's run by autistic people. Elon, Zuck, Gates, all specifically autistic, also Asperger's. So it's like, I fit right in.
It's okay. Maybe most of your friends are also autistic and we haven't been diagnosed, because we all have some.
I can see you being on there with me.
Well, I was a gifted student.
Mm-hmm. You have a photographic memory?
I do have a photographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like people. But I am very social. I just don't like people.
And you notice everything about everything. You're very cute sense of detail.
And when I am focused on certain things, I'm very focused on them.
Might make you change the
I mean, that's fine. You know, I can be okay with being high functioning.
Yeah, there's a couple things that are specific to Asperger's. And so, like, the memory is one. The photographic memory, long memory. Like, my earliest memories, I was 2.5, 3.
Yeah, I have very great long memory, terrible short memory. I'd be like, what you talking about? I don't remember that.
All those things, yeah. So I created a symbol. I don't know any other people closely with Asperger's, but this is what when I first found out, I was like, this is my thing. Not Asperger's.
Upside down?
Big town.
Big town. Okay. Cool. So you've done this nonprofit work. Like, what is the biggest thing that you feel like you've accomplished with it?
I'll say there's two. There's the personal and then there's the impact part.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I would love to say the accolades and awards and all the things would probably be what people would think I'd say, but it was actually the grit that I got. It took a whole nother level of grit to work for free at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Because the university could only pay me for so long. And then afterwards, I had to just keep working, right? Mm-hmm. If I wanted to stay involved in my program. And so when you were doing something like that out of love and passion, you get tired. You get tired of doing it. You don't want to do it anymore. You know, there's sacrifices that come with doing that. And so I think it developed an entirely new level of grit for me. If all my years of working 2 jobs and do it, this one did it. Because it really forced me to dig deep and to keep showing up, even when I didn't want to, even though I'm not even being paid to. And there was, upwards of 20 hours being spent at some points working on this thing and trying to get this thing off the ground and get it stabilized to help people. I think from an impact perspective, it's the one thing I know I did right in life. It's the one thing that I know that if, I'm off this earth tomorrow, that I help people, that I truly helped people and I changed the lives and the trajectory of people's lives that look like me. And I get that. I get to own that forever. And I also get the nice benefit of I got a friend who owes me a favor at pretty much any tech company you can think of.
Fair enough. Yeah, you'll never be out of work for too long.
Never be out of work. I got somebody who would vouch for me and put my name down and say and go hard for me.
That's real.
And so I love that, and I love how my students talk about me, but I also love how my students talk to each other. Like, we had our conference back in May, and I walked up. We're on our 7th cohort right now, our 8th cohort. And I walked up to a student, to like a 6-person table, and it was cohort 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, convincing a girl who was thinking about joining the program. And they were all telling their stories of how they had met each other. And 1 mentored 2, or 2 mentored 1, 3 mentored 2, whatever. And so they were trying to convince this girl to join, and they'd offer their mentorship and their help, and they'd all had jobs and product and were working in corporate, and they were telling the stories of, I was making this much money, and then I got this, I was doing this in my career, and then I got this, and then I got community too, because I got these friends, and we all a group of friends and all this. And so those types of stories for me, the girl who was in an abusive relationship, did the program. It helped her to get a job. She could afford to leave her husband, right? The guy who was homeless, literally homeless, used my address for his first job, to sign the paperwork, right? And then went on to make $250,000 a year, right? From homeless to that. The girl who was working in a strip club and is now making $200,000 a year, from bartending in a strip club to that. Like, the stories are, and these are Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's story isn't even that dire. One of my favorites is a guy that I helped get in at Tesla before Tesla stock shot up. And he had a family and 2 kids. And he got in, Tesla stock shot up. This is like pandemic time. And his offer in his stock portfolio become $1 million portfolio, right?
Mm.
That changes the trajectory of his life. For his wife, for his kids, they moved to Europe and everything with the kids and started home.
And these were people that were already in the workforce? Like, they had already graduated college? Or
they had graduated from college. Most of them were doing jobs that they didn't love. Mm. And I prefer to work with mid-career transitioners. So I don't really deal with like undergrads or like people who are fresh out of college. It's typically you've been working a job and then you want to switch over to product for some reason or another. And I've been able to help those people. And
those people they actually have to go to University of Washington?
No.
It's all
that's the other thing. It's all virtual. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a student. We do provide you a credential, but you don't have to be a student at the university to go. And it's free. It's 150% free. It's not, pay $9.99.
You got my wheel spinning.
It's free. We run completely on donations. And the reason that it was free is because I just feel like there are so many barriers for people of color, and especially somebody who has had to jump over every single one, right? Mm-hmm. I'm one of the few people I know that started at the very bottom of the product management ladder and has come up to this place, right? There's 7 levels, right? From where I started to where I am now. With no breaks, no handouts, no, I'm gonna switch companies and get a 2-level job. No. And so I think knowing that and knowing what it feels like, I have a lot of empathy for that. And so I was very shocked and very blessed that the university allows me to offer this for free. And we went off the donations. So the donations from corporations to pay the teachers. And it was just me thinking about, I hate business plans that monetize the people who need the help the most, right? Mm. So you have some amazing service, but then you charge people who need the help. Mm. And, one of the things I thought about was like, the companies need us. We don't need them. Mm. So why don't we charge people for access to us? And access for this trained skill set of people of color who know what they're doing and who are learning. When I built the program, we went and recruited PMs from the best companies, right? Fang, whatever, to help me build out this curriculum. So you're learning how to do product from Apple, Google, Amazon, Salesforce, all these different companies, all in one experience. And so I'm like, you're getting these really trained, well-trained people. And so the company's bought in.
And how long is the program?
It was 12 weeks. 12 weeks. And yeah.
So 3 months of your life can change.
In less than that, because a lot of them get the job before they graduate.
All right. So let's pivot into like Fun Martie, right? So yeah, Martie's not accepting applications for new friends. It's probably a 5-year wait list.
That's not true. I'm a very friendly person. That's one of the things that comes with autism.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, none of y'all new people, don't hit up Martie thinking you can go to MartieCon.
Hell no.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's a 5-year list for sure.
But like, back to your father, you said like your father inspired these trips, right? Like, what was your first trip?
Very first one was to Toronto to Carolina.
All right, so now Martie's birthday is at the end of July, right? I'm not gonna tell her birthday because y'all are weird and people will stalk her. Yeah. But end of July, and she just got back from Bali. So like, and this was year 10. Next year's year 10, right? So, and I'm gonna make sure that I get to year 10 because I've been to 2 of the trips, right? And Martie likes me to come because I'm the person to make sure I make sure everybody's on time and we do things that we say we're going to do.
He didn't come last year, but it was late. Had he been there, we would on time.
Is that something to do with Asperger's too?
Until you take the test.
But I think that's just because my mom always was late and it pissed me off.
No. You are anal retentive boy. If you ask me.
Whatever. But yeah, so like, how did your father kind of inspire these trips?
I think, like I said, my dad was terminally ill for 15 years. seeing somebody slowly dying, even though, you know, we had high hopes, at the end of the day, slowly dying. Every birthday was like a really big deal. And so, and he was not a birthday person. He grew up with a lot of siblings. You know, his birthday, his mom just made his favorite cake. And it wasn't until he had kids that he even got into receiving gifts and all of that. And it was from us doing it. And one of the beautiful things is when he passed, that was what was in his desk. All these little things that we had made since we were little kids. And he had a file folder for every kid, 7 kids. Everyone had a file folder, and all of your big moments were in this file folder, you know, and he had kept them in his desk. They were never allowed to go into or touch. Everything was locked. And so to see these things were really beautiful, right? But I think the other aspect of that is the sad part, which is my dad was 53. He's 55, he wants to go to Maui. I'm gonna go to Maui when I turn 55. I'm gonna go. My dad was not a traveler. He was not somebody who went on a lot of trips. And part of that was, you know, the medical part. He said, I'm going to Maui and we're gonna have this big family vacation. And that day never came. He planned, he lived his whole life taking care of his kids. When I get older, I'm gonna just travel. He said, I'm just traveling with my wife. I'm gonna go to these places like, and country people, right? He wanted to go to Biloxi, Mississippi, Maui, right? He wasn't trying to live, get off the stage.
He's not trying to leave the U.S.
Right. But these moments just never came. And so in that kind of year after he left, and I'm thinking about like,
how do I honor him?
How do I honor him? And what has this experience taught me? One of the things is don't wait, right? What would it mean to do it now? What would it mean to do it in, you know, the next couple of months versus putting things out for opportunity that never happens, right? And so the way I approach my birthday is if this is the very last one, this is how I'm gonna go after it, right? And this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna spend it doing something I've never done with people I absolutely love and giving people these cool experiences and doing it with my friends, right? Those are the things that I enjoy. And so it really just came out to just seeing all those years of him just pushing and be so fortunate to get one more birthday and celebrate so big for him. And then eventually they stopped. And so I started living my own life like, what if I died when my dad died? What if I died at the same age? I only got X amount of years left.
Right.
So we got to make all of them count.
That's real. And I think just from a traveling experience, right? I think the first time I traveled out of the country by myself, it opened my eyes to like, one, how arrogant we are as Americans.
They don't even like us.
Well, just from the fact that like, you don't really think about the privileges that we have, or like the fact that other people are watching. Like I don't watch. I'm not watching.
Pay attention to other cultures.
Yeah, or countries like I don't care about your elections.
Yeah.
Like what does that got to do with me? But it does, especially as an investor in business or in stocks and things of that nature. Is like, oh, I probably should pay attention because what happens there can affect my market and all these things. But I think also it's just like once you get that itch, it's kind of hard to like not keep doing it. Because when I went to Carabana, that was my first time like leaving the country, doing something that I wanted to do because I went to Jamaica before, but it wasn't something I wanted to do at the time. It became a thing for me. It was like, oh, I gotta go because like, oh, I ain't never seen that, or like,
I never had poutine.
Yeah, like, oh, this is different, but I like it, or like, and like it just it becomes fulfilling. And you want to share that with other people too. Like, like I always tell people like, hey, if you can afford it, you don't got to stay in the most expensive places like that.
Most people can afford it. They just don't realize it.
Right. And I'm like, there's payment plans. We talked about this in like episode 2. Like you can figure out a way to get there if you want to get there. So like, what's out of the 9 places you've been, cause I know you've been to other places, right? But out of the 9 Martie cons, what's been your favorite?
They're like children. I can't pick one that's one because they all were significant.
She doesn't want to offend people that weren't on certain trips.
No. It's really, they were all significant for different reasons, right? I put a lot of thought and time into curating the people, the vibe, the experience, where we go. And so all of them are significant for different reasons. The first one's significant because it's the first one.
Of course.
Like, I didn't even know what I was starting, right? The one you came, the first one, Phuket was significant. It was the first co-ed one, was the first time that I like really, really planned and, you know, done it at that scale because we had 10 people on that trip.
Yeah.
And I'd never done it that way. It was always a girls trip. The first 4 or 5 were always girls trips. So bringing in the guys brought in a whole nother element and really changed, you know, quite a bit, right? But in a fun and engaging way, right? This year was really special. It was probably one of the smaller ones that I've done. It's not the smallest, but it's the smaller ones that I've done. Just a few girls in Bali, and taking it kind of back to how I started. Girls trip. We went doing something really fun, but given where I'm at in my life right now, I needed that, just that feminine energy. I love women. I love being around my female friends. And so to have the girliest of girl trips in the #1 place for female travel was amazing, right?
I was jealous, and I'm not even a girl. Y'all was having fun.
We had an amazing time, and we kept talking about that. Man, men were here, we wouldn't be able to do this, and men were here, they'd be hating, but it was good. So they were all special. 2020 was special because people risked the Rona for me and came out for me, and we still had it. And that was a special one too. So they're all different. That's
right. So we're gonna wrap up, but like, what's next for Martie? Like, what do you have on the docket? Like, what do you want to accomplish next?
I think right now, I'm looking a lot into, I think it's some men do, but I don't think women do this enough. And thinking about legacy and who you want to be and where you want your life to go. And so one of the exercises I do with myself is I take myself 5-10 years in the future, and I look back and I say, what do I want to be able to say about myself? What does she look like? What does she enjoy? Where does she like to go? What are her experiences, and what does it take for me to get there? So right now I'm thinking about 40-year-old self. What does my 40-year-old self want? Does she
and she's kind of still far away from 40.
Does she want a family? Where does she want to be in her career? What does she look like? Like, what are those experiences? Like, where does she live? Right. And so I'm working on those things now. I'm just trying to figure out how I can today create the life that I want instead of waiting until I'm 40 to get it.
That's dope. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming. This has been, one, enlightening, but two, like, it's always great to like get to know my friends a little bit deeper, because we probably would never have these conversations. But
yeah, and I want to flip them to yours.
I mean, we can. But like I said, guys, thank you for joining today. I wish you peace, patience, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, discernment, health, strength, resolve. So you guys be easy or don't, but every choice has a consequence and every action has a reaction.